Ever feel that like wave of panic when you're asked to speak up unexpectedly, maybe at
Yeah.
work or in a meeting or something,
Oh,
like
yeah.
you weren't prepared?
Totally.
Yeah, you are very much not alone. Today, we are diving into some fascinating Stanford research on spontaneous speaking, pulling out the best techniques to help you totally rock those moments when you're put on the spot.
And we're starting with kind of the elephant in the room. Why public speaking, even in casual settings, can feel so downright terrifying for so many people.
Yeah, for sure. And the source material, Think Fast, Talk Smart, starts off strong with this stat that is so relatable. 85% of people get nervous speaking in public.
85%.
85%. That means if you don't feel at least a few butterflies, you are in the minority here.
Wow. That really highlights how common this fear is, right? Which is, I think, a good starting point. Now, the interesting thing is the research emphasizes that anxiety isn't actually the enemy here. In fact, those nerves, that energy can actually be channeled into focus, which is obviously a good thing when you need to think on your feet.
Okay, so it's like that feeling right before a roller coaster. Right.
Yeah.
A little scary, but also kind of exciting because you know something big is about to happen.
Exactly. Yeah, it's all about how we frame those physical reactions. Now, the Stanford talk dives into a few techniques for managing those nerves, and the first one is surprisingly simple. Greet your anxiety.
Greet it. Like say hi to your racing heart and sweaty palms.
I know it sounds a little strange, but the idea is to just acknowledge those feelings instead of trying to ignore them or push them down. When we try to suppress those nerves, it can actually make them worse. Acknowledging them kind of takes away some of their power.
So instead of thinking, oh no, I'm getting nervous, you'd think, okay, nerves, I see you. You don't control me.
Yeah, exactly. It's a subtle mental shift, but it can make a big difference. Now, another technique they highlight is all about changing your perspective on public speaking itself. Instead of viewing it as this performance where you're being judged, try to approach it more like a conversation.
This is really interesting to me because I think a lot of the time we get nervous because we feel like we're on stage in a way.
Right.
But if you can shift your mindset to think of it as just chatting with someone, like we're doing right now, that takes the pressure off, right?
Exactly. And they actually give a couple of concrete ways to do this. First, start with questions, just like we do in natural conversations, right? Questions instantly engage the other person. Even if you're giving a presentation, you can start with a question like, have you ever wondered why? Or what if we could? It just piques their curiosity, draws them in.
So right off the bat, you're creating that sense of dialogue, even if it's just you speaking.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
And then the other way to make it feel more conversational is just through the language that you use. So ditch the formal, one must consider type of phrasing and opt for more inclusive language like we and you.
Right.
It makes a huge difference in how approachable you sound.
It's like you're inviting your audience to be part of the journey with you, rather than lecturing at them from afar. Exactly. Now, the third technique they cover, this one really stood out to me. It's all about time perception.
Okay, time perception. Tell me more about that.
So they point out that when we're anxious about speaking, our minds tend to race ahead to all the things that could go wrong. What if I forget what I'm going to say? What if nobody laughs at my jokes? All those what ifs, right?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
I've lived in that mental space way too often.
Yeah, and those what ifs just amplify the anxiety.
For sure. So how do we actually stop that what-if train before it leaves the station? Like, what are some practical tips?
Right, so they had some good ones in the material. Some of them involve physical activity, even something as simple as a quick walk to kind of shift your focus.
Okay.
Others use music or counting.
Interesting.
Anything that helps quiet that mental chatter. I even read about one speaker who swears by tongue twisters.
Oh, wow.
You want to find whatever works to bring your attention back to the here and now.
The present moment.
Yeah.
The present moment. Yeah. Easier said than done sometimes, though, right?
It definitely takes practice, but that's kind of the whole point of this research,
Right,
is like
yeah.
building those mental muscles. Now, once you've kind of got those anxiety-busting tools in your back pocket, the Think Fast, Talk Smart talk outlines 4 steps for actually mastering the art of spontaneous speaking.
4 steps. Okay. I'm ready. Hit me with step 1.
All right. Step 1 is, and this is where the Stanford approach gets a little bit interesting, dare to
Okay.
be dull.
Ball. Okay. I came here to level up my speaking skills, not to bore people to death.
Right. It sounds counterintuitive, doesn't it?
It really does.
Especially for, those of us who want to come across as, like, sharp and insightful in every interaction. But here's the thing. Our brains, they love patterns. We're always trying to plan, predict, come up with the perfect thing to say, right?
Yeah.
And while that serves us well in a lot of situations, it can actually kind of work against us when it comes to spontaneity.
So it's like our brains get stuck in rehearsal mode instead of actually being present in the moment.
Oh, yes. We overthink it instead of just letting things flow naturally. And that's where this next game comes in. Shout the wrong name. Remember them talking about this?
Oh, right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Where you're pointing at things and you have to call them anything but their real name. That one
Yeah.
did make me laugh when I was reading the research, I have to admit.
It seems so easy when you explain it, right?
It does.
But then as soon as you start playing, you realize how quickly your brain tries to, like, impose order.
Oh, yeah.
It wants to find a theme, create a pattern, anything to kind of, like, make sense of the randomness.
Totally. I can totally see myself trying to, like, name all fruits or something,
Yeah.
just to feel like there's some logic to it.
Right, exactly. And it's in those moments when we catch ourselves clinging to those patterns that we can start to kind of loosen the reins a little bit
Mm-hmm.
and embrace true spontaneity. You're basically training your brain to let go of the need to be right
Mm-hmm.
and just react in the moment.
So it's like building a mental muscle for flexibility.
Well,
You're intentionally throwing your brain off balance so that it learns to adapt more quickly.
exactly.
I love that.
It's like cross-training for your brain. And that leads perfectly into step 2, which is it's an opportunity, not an interrogation.
Oh, I like that reframing. Because I think when you view speaking as this kind of test that you have to pass,
Right.
it's so easy to get defensive, right? Like you're just waiting for the other shoe to drop or for someone to like poke holes in your argument.
Yes, exactly. But when we approach speaking as an opportunity to connect, to share, even just to play with ideas,
Right.
it becomes so much less daunting. And that shift in perspective, I think, can make all the difference. Which brings us to another one of the games from the Stanford research, the imaginary gift exchange.
Oh, yes. This one sounds fun and a little bit out there. Remind us how it works again.
It's so simple but surprisingly powerful. So you and a partner, you're pretending to give each other gifts.
Okay.
But here's the catch. The receiver, they describe what they see when they open this imaginary box. And the giver has to instantly come up with why they chose that particular gift.
So even if the receiver says something totally unexpected, you just have to roll with it and make it work.
Exactly.
I love it.
It's all about embracing the unexpected, thinking on your feet, finding those opportunities for connection in any situation. You're basically turning life into one giant improv stage.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
I can see how that would be so helpful, not just for speaking, but for like thinking creatively in general,
Totally.
just being more adaptable. Okay, step 3 from the research. This one seems straightforward, but I have a feeling it's harder than it sounds. Don't just do something, stand there. Okay, what's the deeper meaning here? What are we really talking about?
It's all about the power and the difficulty, frankly, of truly listening. You know, so often we listen just enough to formulate our response,
Yes.
but really deeply understanding something, understanding of the person, requires slowing down,
Yeah.
absorbing not just the words, but the intent, the emotion behind them.
That is so true. I am so guilty of this. I will be halfway through planning out my brilliant response in my head before the other person has even finished talking.
Oh, it's such a common trap.
It is.
We are just like programmed to respond quickly, you know? So we miss those crucial nuances. The researchers at Stanford use a rather unique game to kind of highlight this point, the spelling bee conversation.
The spelling bee conversation. Okay, you're going to have to refresh my memory on that one. That sounds a little intense.
Okay, so imagine having a conversation where instead of speaking the words, you have to spell them out loud.
Oh my gosh.
Every single word.
I can barely spell words correctly on the first try, let alone carry on a whole conversation that way. But I'm guessing that's the point.
You got it.
Okay.
It forces you to slow down, right?
Yeah.
To a snail's pace, to truly, truly absorb each and every detail of what the other person is communicating. It takes you from passive hearing to active listening in a big way.
Wow. It's like putting your listening skills through boot camp. And I bet even if you don't start, like, spelling out every conversation you have, just that awareness of, like, I need to slow down, I need to really absorb what this person is saying, can be a game changer.
100%. Just that shift in awareness makes a difference.
Yeah, 100%. So that brings us to the final step in the Stanford framework, and it's one that really resonates with me. Stories are your secret weapon. Okay, tell me more about why stories are so powerful for this kind of spontaneous speaking.
Well, I mean, think about it. Our brains are wired for stories.
Right.
We've been telling them and listening to them since, like, the dawn of time. There's a reason why we remember information better when it's presented within a narrative structure.
That's so true.
In fact, the research points out that structured information is about 40% more memorable than just a bunch of facts and figures.
It's true. It's true. Like, I can't rattle off my credit card number from memory,
Right.
but I can tell you a story about the time that I lost my wallet and had to cancel all my cards, you know?
Exactly. And the Think Fast, Talk Smart Talk actually gives us a couple of specific structures that we can play with.
Okay.
The first one is a classic: problem, solution, benefit.
Right.
So you present a problem, offer a solution, and then highlight the benefits. Simple, but effective.
It is.
And like you said, it's a framework that's been used in storytelling for centuries.
Exactly, yeah. It's
Yep.
familiar to people, so it's easy to follow along.
Yeah.
The other structure that they mention is what. So what, now what?
Okay.
So you start by presenting something, the what. Then you explain why it's significant, the so what. And finally, you offer some kind of call to action or a takeaway, the now what.
So it's like creating this mental roadmap for your audience to follow instead of just this jumble of words and ideas.
Exactly.
You've got a framework to kind of hang your thoughts on.
Yeah, and the beauty of these structures is that you can use them in so many different situations.
Right. Yeah.
From like casual conversations with a friend to a formal presentation at work.
Absolutely. It's like having those mental templates ready to go so you're not, grasping for words when the pressure's on.
Yeah, and the more you practice using them, the more natural they become.
Yeah. Even just in like your everyday conversations, you'll start to see those opportunities to structure your thoughts in a way that's really clear, engaging, and ultimately more memorable.
I love that. This has been such a fascinating deep dive.
It really has.
We've gone from like facing those public speaking fears head on to like literally rewiring our brains for more spontaneous and engaging communication.
Yeah. And that's what's so powerful about this research from Stanford. It's not about becoming a different person when you have to speak up. It's about understanding how your mind works and then giving yourself the tools to kind of navigate those moments with more confidence and authenticity.
Love it. So you came to this deep dive wanting to level up your speaking skills, especially when you're put on the spot. And we've unpacked some really powerful techniques, from simply greeting your anxiety to embracing the power of stories. But here's the real challenge, and it's one that I'm going to be working on myself as well. What's one small step that you can take today to actually put this knowledge into action? Maybe it's trying out one of those games that we talked about, or maybe it's structuring an email using the problem solution benefit framework. The possibilities really are endless.